So our first speaker is Brad Frost. Brad is, as many of you know, an energetic and enthusiastic person for the web in general, and in particular talking about atomic design and pattern libraries and style guides and all of those things. We're very, very happy to have him. So please join me in welcoming Brad Frost.
Thank you, sir. So this is bizarre, speaking at sort of a former high school. It's like bringing back a wave of memories, some happy, some sad. Sort of surreal, I don't know. This is cool, but this is my first time in Portland. Wow, you guys have an amazing city. This is great. Yeah, all right. It's called Winning Points with the Locals. So yeah, my talk is called Looking for a Place to Hang My Hat, but I don't wear hats, I wear a helmet. This is a talk about a lot of things, so we'll just get right into it. Are you okay? Yeah. So we are this kid. We're being fire hosed in the face with more stuff than ever before, right? More information. We're tasked with making more products, more services, more content, more features, making these work on more devices, more device classes, more viewports, more browsers, more environments than ever. There's more techniques, more software, more tools, more methodologies, more buzzwords. And just to keep up with it all, we have more tweets, more Medium posts, more conferences like this, more podcasts, more everything, right? Anybody else feel overwhelmed? Yeah, like this is, it's anxiety-inducing, right? It's crazy, right? But sort of the funny part of this scene, I mean, like the whole thing is funny, but the funny part of this scene is that he's just sitting there, like he doesn't have to, right? He's just sort of sitting there, Indian style, taking this fire hose to the face, right? So again, like I think that we are this kid, right? We have a decision to make. Do we sit in front of the fire hose, continuing to be bombarded and just, by this torrent of information, of stuff, or can we figure out a way to step aside, right? To sidestep this and stay more sane in the process, right? So right now, there's more devices, more screen sizes accessing the web than ever. Right, I love this image. It's like a swift punch to the gut. It's like, this is what our jobs entail now, right? Who wants to go be a farmer now, right? It's like, nope, no thank you, right? And for the longest time, right, we had this very overwhelming feeling of, how the hell do we design, develop things for all of this stuff? And then descending from the clouds like a golden god, Mr. Ethan Marcotte came, swooped in, and saved the day and introduced responsive web design. Ethan's now had to endure 5 years of me photoshopping him onto stuff, so way to go, Ethan. You're a good sport. But Ethan introduced this really simple formula, right? Fluid grids, flexible media, and media queries. These three ingredients that allow us to deal with this device diversity without constantly having to scramble just to keep up, right? It's like Samsung shits out a new device with a different viewport size every 30 seconds, right? It's like, how do we keep up with that, right? And Apple's in the game now too. It's like the iPad Max or what a Pro, or and it's crazy. And for a while, every time Apple released, the taller iPhone, people freaked out, right? The web community freaked out. Oh, more pixels. Oh, well, let's freak out. But now it's like, every new Apple keynote event, it's like, oh, hey, now you can do this whole split screen, browser stuff, and oh, here's all these different screen sizes, and we're like, cool, right? It gives us solid ground to stand on, right? So we could hang our hats on responsive web design, right? There's now more context. Right? More device classes, more form factors, more browsers, more context, more variables, more stuff that could go wrong, right? Tim Kadlec recently had a great post where he talked about this, right? He's like, I have no control over the network. It could be fast, it could be slow, it could be down entirely. I have no control over the front end, over the end device. It could be a phone, laptop, e-reader, watch TV. It could be a top-of-the-line one or a budget device with low specs. It could be a device released the other day or something released 5 years ago, right? I have no control over the client running on that device. It could be the latest and greatest of modern browsers. It could be one of those browsers we love to hate, or it could be a proxy browser. It could be an in-app browser. We just don't know. Right? I have no control over the visitor or their context. They could be sitting down. They could be taking a train. They could be multitasking while walking down the street. They could be driving. It happens. They could be colorblind. Right? We just don't have control over these things. Right? As Jeremy and Keith so wonderfully said, you know, the web is not this platform, right? It's not this singular thing. We're not just creating an experience. It's this continuum of experiences based on all of these different factors, right? Our experiences are going down to the best of the best, the crappiest of the crappy, and everything in between, right? So that's why, you know, instead of this whole notion of making all these assumptions at the start of our designs, at the start of our builds and stuff, or, oh, let's just focus on the best case scenario, right? Of course the user's on a large screen, right, on a wired connection, right? Of course they're caffeinated when you have their full attention, right? Of course they have capable input types like mouse and keyboard and stuff like that. Instead of making all those assumptions, right, like what Luke Wroblewski has been talking about for years now, right? This idea of flipping everything on its head and saying, you know, let's embrace the constraints this mobile medium provides, right? Let's assume less up front and use that, right? Use those constraints to create better experiences. Right? So instead of making these assumptions, we're starting with this lean core experience, and that as screen space increases, as device capabilities increase, we could use that stuff to layer on enhancements, right? And this idea of progressive enhancement has been around for a long time. It just matters a whole hell of a lot more now, right? But even making things in this way doesn't necessarily guarantee we're going to be future-proof, but it does prepare us for whatever might come around the corner, right? Nobody knows where the device landscape, where the web landscape's going to be even next year, right? That's sort of a humbling thought, right? That the projects, like think of the thing you're working on right now, right? That is going to be interacted with on a bunch of devices that don't exist yet. Right? That's like a weird thought, but increasingly commonplace, right? I worked on a project not that long ago in 2013, and you know, before these watches were a thing, and then it's like, oh, hey, like there's the site I made in 2013. It's like, it was like a cool feeling, right? It's like I wasn't sitting there coding this website and going, oh, one of these days these watches are going to be a thing. I might want to make a watch breakpoint, right? And it's like, but boom, like there it is. It works. Like I like that, right? So progressive enhancement is something we could hang our hats on, right? There's more places our UIs are going to, right? More considerations to factor in when creating all of our UIs, right? I'm sure you're all practicing responsive design. This stuff is hard, right? There's more expectations from people demanding a more coherent, cohesive, consistent experience. So that's why these things like these design systems and thinking of things in our UIs in terms of systems rather than these series of pages matter so much. There's been a bunch of different style guides released out there. One of the more recent ones is Salesforce, if you've all seen this. Their Lightning design system. But you crack open the hood on these things and you have things like, here's their button styles, right? Here's how they treat their data tables. Here's how they treat their different images and stuff. And this gives them a solid foundation, right? The solid system that they could combine in a bunch of different ways to create these massive, huge UIs that go everywhere. And that's what I've been sort of spending a lot of my time these last couple years harping on about this notion of atomic design, sort of trying to take that a step further where it's not just about breaking everything down, but how can we do that in a very deliberate way, right? So this is like atomic design applied to Instagram, right? So Atomic Design has 5 different stages. You have sort of the page level, which is the final complete thing that the end user is going to interact with. You have the templates, which sort of shows the underlying sort of content structure of that page. You have organisms, which are relatively complex components, right? So you could see Instagram's whole sort of, their photo organism, right? That is like the sort of staple cornerstone of their whole interface. Then you could sort of break that apart even further into these relatively simple components I call molecules, and then of course, whenever you break it down in its entirety, you end up at their sort of raw materials, their basic Lego blocks, right? So these sort of 5 stages all happen concurrently and allow designers, developers to craft deliberate design systems so that we're not just, creating this ad hoc, sort of page, and that whenever we need to make a new page, we need to reinvent the wheel, right? This saves a ton of time, money, effort, all this stuff. This is something we could hang our hat on. And there's a talk for another day. You could buy my book. Hey, only $10, but it's another, right. But this whole idea of sort of having a design system, this is from Google's Material Design, and they've actually been releasing updates to their design system. And this is fantastic. And this is, I think, the promise of these things, right? Where it's not about every 3 to 5 years, let's totally just throw everything out and start from scratch. And that's how a lot of our projects work. It's like, oh, we need to redesign our old site, looks like crap, right? By establishing these design systems, we're able to take them and put them into the wild, learn from them, see how they're used, and roll all of that thinking, all those analytics, all that great stuff back into the design language. And that's what, it's been really cool seeing Google sort of updating their components and all of this stuff based on real usage. There's more stuff, more crap, what I humbly call bullshit, right? Pop-ups, jargon, junk mail, anti-patterns, right? Sensationalism, begging for likes, tracking scripts, marketing spam, dark patterns. So I made a site called Death to Bullshit, which highlights some of this bullshit. All right. Right? QR codes, barely visible unsubscribe buttons, carousels, auto-playing audio and video, bloatware, right? Sudden redirects to the App Store, right? Ticked by default subscribe buttons, right? So, and then after a while, I think it just turns into this creepy girl. But this whole idea that, and there's actually been a lot of recent conversations about the ethics of ad blocking and all this stuff, and it's more nuanced than that. It's not an all or nothing sort of thing. I think really, at the end of the day, because people are being just fire hosed with more information, with more just stuff every day, it's up to us to craft experience that respect users and their time. And that sounds like a simple concept, but boy, how quickly that gets out of hand, right? So that's sort of a rallying cry to, just come back to simple, respectful experiences, right? Make every aspect, every feature, every piece of thing you put on your experiences fight for their life to be there, right? From a performance standpoint, from a respect standpoint, from everything, right? There's more techniques, more software, more tools, more libraries, more frameworks, more GitHub repositories that are multiplying like horny rabbits, right? It is overwhelming to try to keep up with all of this stuff. So I'm here. I will use this stage as an opportunity to do a little LinkedIn recruiting. Things have been going pretty well for Brad Frost Web LLC, and I might be able to hire a new designer, developer to come on board with me. So, being that you're all smart enough to come to a great conference, maybe I'll strike some gold. So if you're interested in working for me, you must demonstrate proficiency in the following. HTML5, mustache, handlebars, blade, jade, twig, bootstrap, foundation, material design, CSS3, Sass, Smax, O, CSS, BEM, jQuery, Angular, Ember, Meteor, React Native, Backbone, React again, just in case. Node.js, Espresso, CoffeeScript, Ice CoffeeScript, Java, Cappuccino, Express, Ionic, Cordova, PhoneGap, Git, SVN, MongoDB, NoSQL, MySQL, YourSQL, HerSQL, RSQL, AWS, .NET, ASP, Python, PHP, just kidding about that. Your Ruby on Rails, Drupal 7, Drupal 8, Django Unchained, WordPress plugin development, Joomla, Perch, CQ5, Photoshop, Sketch, Macaw, Frunt, Adobe Edge Reflow, Adobe Image Ready, remember that? Adobe InDesign, Balsamic, Microsoft Azure, Microsoft Paint, and a whammy bar. If you fit these requirements, Brad Frost Web LLC is eager to see what you have to offer our cutting-edge global workforce. Starting salary is competitive $12,000 per year, and perks include casual dress and a ping pong table. No recruiters, please. It is absolutely overwhelming, the amount of tools, technologies, buzzwords we have to keep up with. Jen Simmons, on her fantastic, absolutely fantastic Web Ahead podcast, just really struck a nerve. She said this. She said, when I'm trying to learn a new technology, it's really easy to Google and look at a tutorial and read some code. What's really hard is to really wrap my head around why I want to use which thing, right? That's frequently the thing that's not well explained or well documented, right? But we, as a web community, we have this tendency to infatuate ourselves with tools, right? I really love this quote. I used to think it was like an Eleanor Roosevelt quote. I saw it getting thrown around, but it's apparently Henry Thomas Buckle. He says, "Great minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, and small minds discuss people." Right? I love that quote. Those are really nice. So I stole it and repurposed it, and that's what I will look like in 15 years. I can't wait. But so this idea of how do we keep up with all this technology? It's like, well, I think that great minds discuss principles, right? Average minds discuss technologies, small minds discuss tools, right? And you get asked all the time, what do you think about Bootstrap versus Foundation, Angular versus Ember, jQuery versus Node.jQuery, WordPress versus Drupal, just all this stuff. And it's like, it really doesn't matter. Can you get your job done? Yes or no, right? And I think that in order to deal with this whole spray of all of these tools, it's so important to establish, really, take the time to establish sets of principles that can help you make decisions, right? So, I sort of came up with a while ago, what I call my 5 principles of adaptive design. And this is how I sort of see every decision, every tool I take on, every technology I use operates on these sort of principles, right? Is the thing taking advantage of the ubiquity of the web, right? The web's ability to go anywhere is its biggest superpower. So I want to choose tools and technologies that can enable me to do that, right? Flexibility, again, back to responsive design, things like that. Performance, right? Do I want to force my users to download a bunch of crap they don't need to make my life more convenient? Maybe not. So on and so forth. There's more processes, more workflows, more methodologies, and there's just simply more stuff that goes into making a modern web experience, right? Sure, we're all familiar with this notion of like a T-shaped skill set, right? So you have sort of like a breadth of knowledge, but then the stem of your T is that thing that sort of, you're particularly skilled in. And I think that this is a fantastic way to sort of look at, what do we focus on, right? There's all sorts of stuff that goes in. Do you be a full stack developer? As a UX designer, do I need to learn how to code and so on and so forth? And whenever you think of the T as sort of a structural element, let's say, like a physical object, right? And stand it up, sort of flops over, just, right? So what I think we need is this, right? I think we need, right, to partner with other T-shaped individuals and truly collaborate on projects instead of, trying to do it all ourselves or whatever. We need to have complementary skill sets, and as a result, we have a solid table, And in order to accomplish this, we need to kill this antiquated notion of the sort of waterfall, siloed sort of process, right? Now, you know what I'm talking about here, right? You have sort of UX designers at the beginning of the project, handing them off to visual designers who color in the lines and make everything look pretty, and then eventually, after like the 17th or 18th round of the homepage PSD gets approved, right? It gets slipped under the door to the developers in the code cave, right? Who look at it and they're like, it's all wrong, I hate you, right? We can't do this anymore, right? There's just too much that goes into making a solid web experience. We need everybody at the table all together, right? Working in this cross-disciplinary collaborative way, right? And in my experience, it sort of works something like this. It's not to say that, that everybody's guns blazing all the time, but we need to get every discipline working on stuff together. This requires all of us, including the fireman. And then there's just more stuff. Again, more blog posts, more Medium posts, more opinions, more conflicting opinions. And this is where, I think it's okay, right? This is sort of what, a visualization of the web. And historically, the web has been treated or knowledge has been treated as this very sort of finite thing. It's whatever could appear within the covers of a book, right? Opening cover is where knowledge starts, closed cover is where knowledge ends, right? But as we see now, with the web, we're making things, everybody is contributing to knowledge. Just yesterday, actually, Liza said, hey, we wrote the same post. It was about the word just and how it's a sort of a dangerous word. But this isn't something where it's like, I got there first, or you wrote it first, or whatever. No, and I hear this from people all the time. It's like, I want to blog, I want to talk about things, but people have already said it. Mandy Brown had this really fantastic talk she gave at Deconstructor. She said, the ability to fit text, to set it and distribute that text to others in such a way that it could be reliably accessed by everyone, such that everyone gets the exact same text, turns out to be required for society to rapidly increase its collective understanding of the world. It's a requirement because learning is an iterative and cumulative process where each bit of knowledge is refined and developed and built on to make the next. So people always say, well, who the hell am I? Why should I, contribute my thoughts? Because we need it, right? Good ideas are worth repeating over and over and over and over again. So I encourage you to blog, to share your thoughts on Medium or your own site, to share your works in progress, to share case studies, right? Data, your works in progress, your first drafts, little prototypes. Right? Ask questions on Stack Overflow, answer questions on Stack Overflow, contribute to documentation, commit bugs, share your code on GitHub. So, there's a whole lot of stuff out there. It's easy to be overwhelmed, but I keep coming back to these sort of points, right? Thinking about principles, thinking about responsive design, thinking about progressive enhancement, design systems, simplicity, respect, sharing, openness, collaboration, right? The web, I think, is like this giant puzzle that we lost the box to. And we're all just sort of fumbling around, right? And it's never fully going to be complete, and we spend a bunch of time, sort of organizing all the sky pieces, right? But then your toddler comes by and eats a couple pieces, and then some jagoff comes and dumps a bunch more puzzle pieces onto the table, and you're like, thanks a lot, right? This is never fully done. The web is never fully done. But this puzzle is still worth putting together. Because, even though it's never going to be done, we can, I think, start seeing progress, start seeing that picture sort of unfold. And like, puzzles, the web is a whole hell of a lot of fun. So with that, thank you for your time.